Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Kevin Amolsch, thank you so much for joining us as our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we'd like to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today, and then let's talk about what you're working on with Pine Financial Group and anything else you have going on, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Appreciate you being here, bud.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate so much the opportunity. Excited to be here and excited to talk about Pine and myself. So I guess I'll start by saying I was born in Denver.
There you go.
I'm one of very few, Mike, this might surprise you or maybe not. I'm one of very few natives of Colorado. See, you're from California.
Yeah.
A lot of people from California seem to be moving to Colorado. So we have a pretty heavy migration. So it's been from all over the country, really. And but I was born here. After high school, I went into the Army and I got stationed in Colorado Springs. I know I skipped ahead there a little bit, but felt like I'm supposed to be in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I've decided to stay. Went to high school on the western side of the city of Denver. Played soccer. Ended up getting into rodeo. Started riding bulls.
Wow.
And that's actually why. That's interesting, right?
That's
cool. Actually something most people don't know about me because I don't talk about that all too often.
I have a cousin that rode bulls.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. And he actually lived in Denver for quite a while.
I wonder if I know him.
Randy Martin. Did you know Randy Martin?
I don't know Randy Martin. No.
Okay, so Doris and Ray Martin are his parents. Doris is my aunt, my mother's sister, and Ray is my uncle. And then Jeff, Amy, and Randy all lived in Denver for 20-some years.
Oh, wow.
They built a company up there. So
I wonder if I've competed against him at one point.
You might have.
It is actually a pretty small world. And you think of Denver, a lot of people think of Denver as the old cow town because that's what it was for so many years. And it still has the first professional rodeo of the season is in Denver.
Yeah.
But it's so much different and so much different than that now. It's a little over 3 million people and very tech heavy. So it's not the old cow town. So to hear someone else rodeo and that lived in Denver surprised me a little bit, but
you know where Parker is?
I do.
So Parker is where my aunt and uncle ended up moving to. So they lived in Denver proper for a long time, many years, and then ended up moving out to Parker. Parker's like an old Western town. I mean, it's tons of history and really a cool place. But when they were buying out there, they bought a former Denver Broncos house. And they were complaining to me because at the time, naturally, I was in real estate and in California and all that. And there was a couple from California that had sold their house and they had, I want to say it was a couple of $1 million in their pocket. And they were trying to outbid my aunt and uncle, and man, my uncle was grumbling like there was no tomorrow.
He must have wanted that house.
Huh? Californians are going to ruin it here,
Yes.
So yeah.
It's still very similar to that. So Denver, you might know this, but it's the most expensive non-coastal city in the entire country. Yeah. So, but it's still far less than like most of cities in California. So it does still feel cheap.
Well, I'll tell you
or more affordable.
I'll tell you the coolest thing about Denver is, and I know you guys get a lot of guff about weather and all that kind of stuff, right? But the coolest thing about Denver, I think, is it's a semi-arid climate. So it's actually pretty dry there. People don't realize that. Like it'll snow, but then it'll be gone in no time.
Yeah, one day.
Right? And it's not terribly humid. It's really a wonderful place to be when you're visiting, and it's also a wonderful place for people to live. I mean, especially if you're into outdoor stuff and
Yes.
all that kind of thing, right? Like Cherry Creek has one of the coolest bike paths I've ever seen in my life. It goes forever, like forever. It goes all the way around through, Denver. I mean, it's really cool. It's just we actually went there several years ago, 25 years ago now. I was offered a job there with a home builder and who's out of San Diego, and they wanted me to run their mortgage division out there. And they basically said, "Look, come out and pick out a house. We're going to put you in a house. We're going to basically, roll out the red carpet, yada yada." Right. So I take my wife out there, who is not a cold weather person. She was born on Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to give you an
Okay.
example.
Yeah.
And her parents were born and raised in Puerto Rico. So to say she's a warm weather gal, right? Kind of an understatement. So we go up there and it snows 3 inches.
She probably never saw snow before.
Next morning we get up, we're going to Breckenridge. We're in my aunt's Navigator, and this Honda, we're on I-70, which is better known as the parking lot in Denver.
Yep.
And we're sitting in the parking lot on I-70, and this Honda Prelude comes down the center median out of control, completely out of control, doing probably 70 miles an hour, and splashes a bunch of slush, because the snow's melting, up against my wife's window on the driver's side back seat of the Navigator. She shot me a look. We never even looked at houses, dude. We were out of there.
Oh no. And
we were not going to live there. She was not bringing the babies there. That was the end of that deal. I mean, it was like, come on, give it a look. At least let's go look at houses. I mean, they're all brand new. They're going to build us a brand new house. Nope.
Oh man, missing out. Yeah,
but
300
really
days of
the
sun
weather
a
there
year.
is really cool. Like the climate is really cool, and it's attractive to people because it's so gorgeous, right? And there's so much to do. So I'm a big Denver fan, you can tell. So, I was
I love it, Mike. And I've never lived anywhere. When I went to basic training, I was down in Georgia. And this was January. I went in January.
Yeah.
And it was cold at night, like really cold. But in the middle of the day, it was so hot. I'm like, this is like the middle of winter. I got to get back to Colorado.
It's feel like a fish out of water, right? So can I ask you a question? Actually, let me ask you a few questions. Number one, why the Army?
Yeah. So, I wanted to get into the service. I knew that.
Why?
And I was really, okay, that's a good question. I was so sick of school, Mike.
Were you?
Like I was not a great student. I got decent grades, but it wasn't a passion for sure. I didn't like the homework and studying stuff I didn't even care about, So it's like I didn't want to go to college. I knew eventually I would, but I didn't want to immediately.
Right.
So I had some options. I can go into the service, or I could just go get a job and work, right? So I just figured the service would benefit me later.
And how old were you?
I was 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I chose the Army. They sold me on laser tag. The recruiter says, if you come in here and you go into the infantry, then you're going to train with lasers, and we're put your vest on, you put the laser on your gun, you go around and you play a game. And it's not quite like that, I've learned. But they definitely got me on the laser tag. That's why I went infantry. And I was really choosing between the Marine Corps and the Army. And I chose the Army because of rodeo. They had a rodeo team at that time.
Really?
They dissolved it basically by the time I got out of basic training. So I never got to experience it. But
I never knew they had a rodeo team.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I was like, okay,
so that was the deal breaker. That was the thing that made you, I got you. I understand. Okay.
It's like, I felt like that was an easy way to go pro, but it didn't work out that way.
Well, get your reps in, right? Right. You're not having to pay to learn. You're literally, if you go into the Army and you're rodeoing for the Army, you're learning on their dime, right?
Yeah, I'm going to get paid whether I perform well or not, right?
I mean, it's kind of like a laser tag. You're learning on their dime. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. So why bull riding?
I'm competitive. A lot of entrepreneurs, I'm sure you are too, as well. But we're competitive, and And there's nothing more competitive that I found than that. I mean, it's you against that animal. It's a true competition, and it's very challenging. So I was just attracted to it watching, on TV, and ended up running into some people that did it and started talking to them. Said, "Can you help me get on? I just want to try it." And gosh, one try and I was hooked.
And these guys are intense. I
Oh, they're
mean, you've
tough.
got to be, no joke, you got to be a whole different level if you're going to be a bull rider, right? I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma,
Okay.
and my grandfather, who I farmed with for 9 years, um, bought a pair of chaps for Randy, my cousin, who was going to go bull riding. And Randy had come to my grandfather and said, I need a set of chaps. I need a pair of chaps. And my grandfather said, so why do you need a pair of chaps? And he said, well, I need a pair of chaps because I'm going to go be a bull rider. And so granddad didn't have a pair of chaps to give him. And so he bought him a pair, brand new, the way Randy goes, right? With his initials on them and all this stuff, right? And so he's really fancy. So he leaves. And as he's driving away, my grandfather turns to me and he says, those chaps are not going to help him survive on the back of a bull.
That's right. I did, I never had chaps. They were not required. They are
Well,
now.
they fly up and hit you in the face when you're on a bull, Bubba.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, they do help because
Come on, right? I'm
I've
sorry.
been
I'm
stepped
sorry.
on
I'm
multiple
sorry.
times.
To all you bull riders out there, I apologize. Okay.
You're fine.
Right? Oh my goodness.
But yeah,
What
it's a
you
lot of,
need
it's
is a
a,
helmet and a flak jacket. Let's be
yeah,
honest, right?
the vest was always a requirement, even when
Yeah.
I was in high school.
Yeah.
The helmet was not, the chaps were not. Now all that stuff is required.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also advisable.
Yeah.
All right. So growing up in Denver, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I mean, I guess this would be no matter where you grow up. But my favorite thing was the people. Like I had a great family. I had great friends.
Yeah.
I loved team sports, so I played soccer. We'd be on the basketball court every day during the summer. We played a lot of baseball. I didn't get into see. I didn't grow up with money. We were lower middle class at best.
Mhm.
So even though we lived in this great state, I couldn't take full advantage. We couldn't afford to buy a mountain bike. I couldn't afford to go to the ski resorts or any of that. So it's really just hanging out with the neighborhood, the neighborhood kids.
So if it was outside, you were doing it.
Oh, we were outside constantly.
Yeah, that's cool.
And no cell phones, right? So street lights, get
Yeah.
home.
Right. That's it, right? Mom calls, you better be booking it.
Yeah.
So, question for you. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I mean, outside of physical education, I did pretty well at math. I enjoyed algebra.
Okay.
I just something about that. I just understood it.
Mhm.
Trying to get the formulas to match, and yeah, I'd say algebra.
So not a lot of gray areas in algebra, right? It's kind of black and
Yeah,
white. It's kind of it's right or it's wrong,
yeah,
Yeah.
numbers are numbers. So if you can
Yeah.
get the numbers to work, I mean, you can. Yeah.
It's interesting. You find out a lot about a person finding out what their favorite subject was, right?
Yeah.
And what their motivation was behind what they did and what they chose to, when they became 18, they chose certain things, right? And I find it fascinating that you chose the Army. I think it's cool that you chose the Army to go do the laser tag thing. It turned out to be a little bit more than that, but so how long were you in the Army?
Oh, it was not long. I was in active duty for 3 years. That was another reason that the Army. I liked the Army over the Marines because I didn't have to commit to a full 4.
Right.
So 3 years active and then 1 year National Guard.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, if you talk about points in your life that are game changers, that National Guard was one. It paid for my school, so like my school was paid for the most part with the National Guard, and then I had the GI Bill from the active service
Right.
that would cover any difference, and I was getting income from the GI Bill.
Right.
But I went and got a student loan, even though I didn't need it, so that I could buy a house. And ended up acquiring my first rental property. So I bought my first house when I was 21, moved into it, rented out the rooms to pay my mortgage, moved out of it with that student loan to buy another house, and I kept that as a rental. So that was my first rental property. I was 21 when I bought the first house, 23 when I turned it into a rental.
So here's the difference between you and me. You ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I was turned down for the first home loan I ever applied for. Guess what age I was?
18.
21.
21. Yeah. So I was denied also. That's where my grandma, yes, bless her heart.
Oh,
She
grandma
came
stepped
in,
in.
she came in, co-signed. Yeah.
Oh, what a sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's cool. See, I didn't know I didn't even know what co-signing was. And my loan officer, thank God, wouldn't help me turn a no into a yes, because if he had, I'd never gotten into this business. I literally got into this business because I got turned down for that home loan and I was convinced I could do better than that.
Yeah.
And over $1 billion in funded home loans later, I proved it.
Nice job. Great for
Yeah.
you.
So, right. So, so in the Army, the first 3 years you're in, what was the single most important thing you learned?
I don't know if this is really a thing, but grit.
Well,
There
it's important to you because this is
it's
about,
yeah, I mean, it's not like a skill or anything. That's why I was struggled with the answer, Mike, but it's definitely grit because look, you can not be the smartest person in the room
Mhm,
and still outperform everybody. I mean,
mhm.
you don't need the skills necessarily if you just outwork people. So
Right.
I think that would be what I learned.
Got to be willing to bring it, right?
Yeah, it's Will Smith that said, "I don't care who you are. If we're gonna do a challenge on a treadmill." He called it the treadmill challenge. Have you heard this? Yeah, we're gonna get on the treadmill and we're gonna set it for whatever we set it for, and then we're gonna run, and I'm gonna win or I'm gonna die,
Mhm.
and it's just outwork you.
Yeah. It's an important skill, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
Big deal. It's a big
you
deal.
can't be successful without grit. Yeah.
It's helped you a lot in your life. I guarantee it. We're going to find threads of this as we go. All right. So National Guard for a year, then you're out, sort of, right?
Yeah,
What do
then
you
I
do
got out.
then?
Yeah. So I was already working in banking at the time. When I got out
Oh,
of the Army,
okay.
I worked for Chase Manhattan,
Yeah.
right when they were merging actually with JP Morgan. So
Yeah.
I was there when they merged, but it was a very short stint, really. It's 4 months, and I was in the collections department. So I was
Oh,
doing
I bet that was
outbound.
fun.
Oh, it was terrible. Outbound calls to delinquent mortgage accounts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
I got an offer to work at a local bank here in Colorado, First Bank. In fact, I think they might have a couple of branches in California, but it's definitely a Denver bank.
Mhm.
And I worked in their call center, but on that one, it was inbound calls and it was helping people with loans. So
Yeah. Much
second
different.
mortgages, car loans, credit cards. So I was doing a lot of the applications and consulting, all that over the phone. So I was definitely in a cubicle and I was in a call center, but I was working in banking, which helped me a lot.
Yeah. One is anguish, the other's hope,
That's
right?
exactly.
Huge
Oh my
difference.
gosh. The
Huge
collections
difference.
is I hats off to anyone that does that.
Yeah. No kidding.
I know it's important and we need it, but my goodness.
So during the or just after the Great Recession, JP Morgan Chase reached out to me,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, and through an intermediary, and I had a radio show, my very first radio show in 2011 here in San Diego. And they had thousands of homeowners that they couldn't get a hold of through their collections department. And they wanted a proposal from me to do a radio show for borrowers of JP Morgan Chase. Like literally, they would sponsor it. It would be just for them to try and call them out, so to speak, right? And get them to talk with us because we had saved thousands and thousands of homes from foreclosure in the previous weeks with a company called, or with a group called NACA, Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America. They came to San Diego right when we were starting the show. And I ended up volunteering with them and we ended up doing a bunch of stuff and helping and all that, right? And Chase took note of it. They paid attention to it and reached out to us. It never went anywhere, but we did put a proposal together to assist collections in trying to get a hold of these borrowers. And part of it was, and you remember this, Chase took over Washington Mutual. They took over one interesting portfolio when they did. And so that was a part of it, was they were trying to get through. I don't know if you knew about all this, but they had warehouses that they were trying to access that had original notes and all that kind of thing. And people had been fired that were running those warehouses. And man, it was rough for a while for them.
I did
I
not know
felt
that.
for them. I really did. So anyway, it was an interesting time for everybody, but for them in particular, it was pretty crazy. So, but that was an interesting time with them. So you go into originations basically, right? And you're solving problems and helping people. And then where do you go from there?
Yeah, so those are all inbound for the bank. So I was already buying properties
Oh,
around
were
that
you?
time. So
That's
that's
cool.
that's sort of the time where I bought that second one. So when you have when I worked in the inbound call center at First Bank, I had a lot of downtime. So I wasn't had like a call quota or anything. It was just if they called in, then I'd answer it and I'd try to help them. So there might be, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever lulls between calls. So I would study and get work done. But I'd also read a lot. So I was reading books about finance and investing, and I had already read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in the army. So I already knew, real estate was really kind of the direction I wanted to go.
Mhm.
So I was studying real estate investing, and then on the weekends, mostly on the weekends, I would go out and meet homeowners to buy their house, like motivated sellers. So I would do some marketing. I would do a lot of outbound calls for that business that I started, and I would buy houses, and I got pretty good at it. And I ended up leaving the bank and focusing on real estate investing full time. So I'd buy a house, maybe two houses in a month, every single month, and I'd flip them or I'd hold them, do a lot of a lot of wholesaling, and that's
Mhm.
how I was making a living. But it got difficult as I progressed through my career because look, rental properties are great and will make you rich. I have no question about that. In fact, that's the surest way, in my opinion, to build wealth.
Yeah.
But it's a slow game. It's a long game,
Mhm.
and you have these dreams about replacing your income with cash flow from rental properties, but that's very, very difficult to do. And I
Yeah.
learned that. So I was like, I need multiple streams. I need to find other ways to have income coming in.
Mhm.
So I went out and got a job, decided to use my degree. I have a degree in finance. So I went out, used my degree, got a job, and worked at a company in downtown Denver, one of the big high-rise buildings, and we were working for Credit Suisse was our client. We were a Wall Street firm, and we were doing mortgage bond analysis. So I was an analyst for mortgage bonds, and this was in
Ooh.
2006, seven, and we analyzed subprime mortgage, if you could believe that. So to have you tell me a story about the credit crisis in '08 that I didn't know surprised me a little bit, but I didn't know about the warehouse issues.
Mhm. Well, it was a logistics thing. They got it figured out, but you know, you remember this, right? JP Morgan Chase takes over Washington Mutual in a weekend.
Mhm.
You're gonna have some challenges.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. And they had some issues. They had some honest to goodness challenges with paperwork and warehouses and logistics, and they got it figured out, but it took a little while. And pardon me. And you know, it was an interesting time, man. It was really kind of crazy. And the reason I started the radio show in 2011 was people were losing their houses right and left to foreclosure. And I was an REO broker, still am, but I was the REO broker, and Chase or Washington Mutual, one of them would reach out to me and say, "Hey, go sell this house." My job was to go knock on the door, and if the former owner was still there, my job was to tell them, "You don't own the house anymore. The bank does."
Oh man.
Right? And we're going to have to figure out a way to help you move. Okay. Some of these people had no clue. One of them turned to me and said, there's no way that they own this house now. I'm like, how's that possible? They said, well, I just paid a law firm $9,000 yesterday, and they guaranteed me that my house would not be foreclosed on. They paid that law firm $9,000 5 days after it had been sold at trustee
Oh,
sale.
that is sad. That is
Okay.
terrible.
Dude,
I've
it
heard these
was
stories too.
this stuff was horrible. Okay. It was so bad. And and I got so frustrated because here I am, just like you're talking about collections, right? Here I am on the firing line, and I'm dealing with people that, like a single mom or a mom who's married, but her husband's moved out, and he was responsible for making the payments on the mortgage, and now she doesn't own the house anymore, and she's got a 3-year-old, hugging her leg as I'm talking to her. And I mean, it was gut wrenching, man. And so I'm having these conversations with people about, look, here's what the truth is. Here's what's really going on. And I'm having one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three conversations. I needed a bigger megaphone. And so I went down to the local AM radio station, met with the station manager, and I said, listen, I need a bigger megaphone. I need to talk to thousands of people at a time. And I think this is the way to do it. And he's like, can you start today? No, but give me a couple of weeks. Let me get some sponsors. And, right. We took the least listened to hour they had in their entire weekend lineup. And in 8 weeks, according to Arbitron, we doubled the number of listeners.
Great.
And we were number one in all of AM radio in our time slot.
And you were helping people. You were changing lives.
And we saved thousands of homes from foreclosure. It was crazy. So it was cool. It was a really neat time.
Yeah, Mike, I'm getting
in
chills
fact, I
here.
just talked to one of the guys from NACA the other day. He's coming out here from the East Coast, and we're going to get together and go hang out. So pretty cool. And I had Bruce Marks on the program. We actually got his life story on tape. So it was kind of cool. Yeah, it was an interesting time.
That's a great story.
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I love this. I'm a huge Kiyosaki fan. So you get that other source of income, analyzing,
trash bonds.
Analyzing bonds, junk, right? I mean,
yep.
So you're analyzing subprime mortgage bonds, and you're working with Credit Suisse, obviously, as a client. So what happens when the Great Recession hits?
So I'd exited that.
Oh, had you? Okay, so you already gone?
Yeah, so I was in there for 2 years, but just under 2 years working for that firm. Clayton was the name of it. And I just really had a passion for, Main Street, not to Wall Street. I wanted to be flipping houses and helping people in Colorado. So I got recruited because of my success as an investor and the amount of volume I was able to do with just like a one-man show. I got recruited to be a mortgage broker, and this was back before the SAFE Act, right? Because it was before the crash. So there's no licensing. I mean, this truly was the Wild West.
Yeah.
And so I just started writing loans to that was able to replace that income while I still focused on investing, trying to keep that going and get better and better as a real estate investor. And then 2008 hit, obviously, and everything just started crumbling underneath me. That was a very challenging time in my life, Mike. Like some of the stories that I hear you saying with the child holding the mom's leg, it really brings me back because I went through a lot of that. I lost several properties. I lost pretty much everything. I was married at the time, and I had just had a daughter. So we had a newborn. It was crazy, and then the person I was working with, Susan, she took me under her wing and helped me become a better mortgage consultant. She decided to exit the business because she was losing everything, right? We were all losing everything. Yeah. And so she exited, and I decided to start Pine Financial. So that's how Pine Financial was born. And then I got out of the conventional world. I didn't want to do FHA, VA, conventional loans. That wasn't for me. I wanted a little bit more control over the business. So I focused strictly on private money. And so we were just raising private money and lending it out to real estate investors, which is exactly what I love to do, right? So that's how Pine Financial was born. And a lot of great companies were born in 2008 and 9 and 10 during that time period.
Yeah, out of necessity more than anything else. So you start Pine Financial, and obviously you have an extensive background because you were flipping houses and doing all the hard money, private money stuff anyway. And so you were a consumer of it before you became a provider of it, which is a very cool thing. You don't often come across that, right? You often come across people that get into the business and then they become a consumer of it after they're providing it. Yeah, you're sort of the other way around, which is kind of cool. So it gives you a unique perspective and a way that you can have a conversation with somebody in an educated and experienced manner where you're coming in almost like a journeyman, right? And you're saying, okay, if you're going to flip this house, we'll finance it, but here's what you got to do, right? That's kind of a really cool thing that most lenders don't have. to be honest with you. Okay. So that sets you apart. That's one of the reasons why you've been so successful. I think anyway, because you're able to come at it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, and our focus, that's a great point, Mike. And our focus is helping our clients succeed. Look, we don't succeed unless our clients do.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Being in the trenches for so long, understanding the business so well has helped tremendously because I know exactly what our clients need.
Yeah.
Right. I've been there. I still am there. I still love buying and selling houses, and I do more commercial stuff now than residential, but I'm still highly involved in acquisition and disposition of assets. Yeah.
There might be
I do some
depositions
depositions too.
We try to avoid that part, but right.
It's funny.
No, I'm with you. It was a Freudian slip, right? So let me ask you this. So you did a bunch of residential deals over the years. What made you decide to go into commercial or gravitate to commercial?
So it's people. There's one of my good friends. His name is Rafiq. He's out of Minnesota, and he's just a powerhouse investor. And so him and I connected, and we have a lot of. I mean, we think the same. So we hang out, and I got to know him pretty well. And he had moved into commercial, and he was like trying to drag me along. And then I ended up going into a commercial mastermind group. It's very expensive. It's like 30 grand a year. So I was pushing it off for so long. And then I decided to go ahead and do it. And I've just met the most amazing people. Some of all of my closest friends are all real estate investors, and it's because of groups and rooms like that.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that now for many years. And it's just the people that want to lift you up. And yeah, I don't know how else to say that, but it's definitely the people that want to lift you up, and that's what they were doing, and that's where my passion was.
So let's stop for just a second, if it's okay. I think this is incredibly important, and that's why I want to talk about it. I want to sort of spotlight this a little. So you've done all these over the years. You've done all these residential deals, right? Mm-hmm. And you meet this guy. You guys think a lot alike. He's trying to get you into the business, and you sort of put it off. But you end up joining this mastermind group, and yeah, it's expensive, okay? But usually anything that's worth it is, okay? There are a lot of people, and here's why I want to talk about this. There are a lot of people that I talk to. I'm sure you can imagine, having done this for 32 years. There are a lot of people that I talk to that need to be in masterminds.
Yes.
Badly.
Everybody probably.
Yeah, and it's really hard for somebody like me to say, hey, you know what? You need to pony up $30,000 and just go join this thing. So talk for just a second about what you learned joining the mastermind group. And then if somebody's thinking about joining one, it sounds like if you knew then what you know now, would you have joined it sooner?
Okay. Yeah. So let me unpack this, because I think coaching and masterminding and peer groups are absolutely essential to heat any kind of peak performance. So I'm in this specific mastermind. It's called the DIC, Diamond Inner Circle. And so it's through the Commercial Academy. And that's the very expensive one. So I'm grandfathered in at 30, but it's higher than that now. Yeah. I'm also in EO, which is across the entire country, right? Entrepreneurs organization. Very affordable. So it's like $7 grand a year. And then you get your little peer groups and you mastermind once a month. And then I'm in another mastermind that's completely free. Mm-hmm. So it came out of the DIC. There's 8 of us, and we get together twice a year, and we just talk about each other's deals. So in that one, it's pretty crazy because it's such a small group and so intimate. We all know each other so well. We do what we call one sheet. So we spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half per person going through a one sheet, which basically lifts the skirt up, right? Mm-hmm. It's what's your net worth, what's your liquidity, how much hours, how much money did you donate, what are your goals, and it goes through everything. And then you kind of get beat up a little bit, right? Everyone's trying to help you, but to help you, you got to create pressure. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and that's completely free, right? And then there's another one that we meet once a year. And it's all business, not real estate. In fact, there's only one other person in that room that's real estate. And that's really highly focused with a moderator. And that's only once a year, and it's like $500 or something. Mm-hmm. I don't even know. It's very affordable. So there's all these different levels of masterminds that I am personally in. But what I learned, to answer your question, I know that was a long way to get to your answer.
No, it's fine. You're fine. Go ahead. I want people to hear this. That's why I asked. So I appreciate you taking the long road with us. because it's important, man. I'm not joking. There are a lot of people out there that need to be in a mastermind. I'm going to give you an example in a second, but go ahead.
All right. Well, let me back up before I tell you what I learned in the DIC.
Sure.
So I knew the masterminding was so important from Think and Grow Rich, right? So a lot of us have read that book. So we know that it's an important piece to your success. And I was having trouble finding a mastermind group to join.
Right.
There's a lot more now than there was when I started 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So what I did is I just decided to start one. And I wanted it to be in Denver, and I wanted it to be real estate investors, and I wanted it to be totally free, sort of like the mastermind group that I just told you about. And what I did was, hey, I want 6 people, and I want all real estate, but I don't want anybody to compete. So I want a real estate attorney, I want a mortgage broker, I want a real estate investor, I want a realtor or a broker. And so I just picked out a title person. So how do we all help each other? And then I just started identifying who I wanted in my group, and I would just call them and ask them. And I'll tell you what, Mike, I heard way more no's than yeses, right? People just didn't want to do it because I was shooting high, really high. Like to even get them to answer their phone was unlikely, right? And then I ended up piecing this thing together. And what we did was every month we would get together and work on each other's businesses and try to support each other. Now there's a leads piece to this also because there was no competition, right? And we have set agenda with a set tasks to complete for the next month to help our business grow. And if you didn't hit that, this is the accountability piece that makes masterminds so valuable. So simple. All you had to do was buy us all breakfast the next month. So if you didn't complete what you said you were going to complete, bill's on you. And this went on for years and years. So I think you are right when you say it's very important. And I think people should hear this. And I think people, if you don't go pay for one or find one, you can create your own mastermind group.
Yeah. So I was exactly frustrated. I was frustrated many years ago. Okay. And I was actually at a point where I was thinking about getting out of the business altogether. I was in the mortgage business. And I had gone to BNI, I'd gone to Latip, I'd gone to all these places. And anybody in real estate was 47th on the list. I'm sort of exaggerating, but I'm not.
No, joking. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, there were 13 mortgage lenders ahead of me. One of them.
And those are leads groups that you're talking about. You're not really trying to help each other.
Latip, I'm talking about BNI. Okay. Referral groups, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I end up going out and starting my own because I'm not real long on patience. Okay. And you probably figured that out by now. So I go out and I start my own. And it's one of the best things I ever did. But the best thing that I did was I masterminded with a bunch of people. So I went out and got a guy that owned a body shop. I went out and got a guy that owned a mechanic shop. I went out and got a guy that was a dentist, right? I got a doctor. I got, a stockbroker, right? My entire business quadrupled in 12 months from just doing this. There were other things I did, but just doing this quadrupled my business in 12 months. It was insane. And I'm still to this day, that was 30 years ago. My goodness, that sounds like a long time. That was 30 years ago. And I'm still to this day reaping the benefits of doing that 30 years ago. Okay. The importance of masterminds are this. You are absolutely programmed to do what's comfortable. And I can tell you this because I know it personally, and I've also learned it. If you've ever read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, he talks about this amygdala, right? I'm saying it wrong, I'm sure, but it's whatever. It's that gland in your brain that talks you out of doing things that might in fact help you. But your brain starts telling you, no, I don't know. It's that little voice, right? That's, I don't know, you probably should, right? Probably shouldn't work out today because you're a little sore, right? Whatever. Okay. Yeah. If you look at champions in this world, champions hear that voice and it's a trigger to go. Tony Robbins is a perfect example. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, big student.
Me too.
Certified me in sales mastery 35 years ago. That is a long time. They should have put me out to pasture a long time ago. Okay. Wow, that is really a long time. I should have, anyway. So
but you look great.
He will, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks a lot. Anyway, right, and checks in the mail. So he goes out every single day and does a cold plunge first thing. And the reason he does it is because that amygdala is just screaming at him, right? And he's like, look, you're screaming at me, but I'm going to tell you that when I say go, we're going. It's it. Okay. David Goggins is the same way. When David Goggins has that little voice going, he goes out and runs 100 miles. I mean, come on, dude, right? So here's what's interesting to me. You're literally programmed to take the easy way out. You're literally programmed to take the lazy way, okay? And I hate to say this to people because it's sort of a rude awakening, but it's true. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend time with. So I have a good buddy of mine who is literally right now experiencing massive stratospheric success in San Diego. He's been on our podcast, okay? He went to a Tony Robbins event. It was a business mastery thing for like 5 days, rocked his world. He went out and found himself a group of multi-millionaires, okay? All these guys are entrepreneurs. All these guys are super successful. They all got together at this really hoity-toity club in San Diego where they meet monthly, okay? And they're sitting around a table. He told this story. They're sitting around a table and they're like, hey, how many times have you been bankrupt? 6. How many times have you been bankrupt? 3. How many times have you been bankrupt? 5. Right? And they get all the way around to my buddy, and my buddy, they ask him, he goes, 0. And they all start cracking up. And he's like, why are you laughing? And they're like, because you haven't tried hard enough.
Yeah. That's
You
powerful.
haven't taken enough risk. Okay. He took that to heart. Now, this is the accountability thing. Okay. He took that to heart and he went out and started taking greater risks, like literally jumped out of his comfort zone, the whole thing. He's now literally experiencing the most success as we speak right now that he's ever experienced in his life. And all this happened just a few months ago. That's, I would submit to you, the power of masterminds. Okay. There's another person that was on our podcast just a couple of weeks ago. Her name's Deborah Razzo. Deborah went through, nearly died in a car accident. Took her an entire year to rehabilitate, learn how to walk again, the whole thing. Okay. Her brother comes out from Florida, spends a year with her. She's in a deep depression, as I'm sure you can imagine. And her brother says, look, you can look at this 2 ways. You can look at it as if life happened to you or it happened for you. She found Tony Robbins. She's now an employee of Tony. She's a counselor at Tony Robbins events, has been for 8 years now. Okay. Started a real estate network in LA. She's now flipping houses and she's now a real estate developer, experiencing the most success she's ever had in her life. But it came from getting a group. She went to this investors association in LA and basically got all the women in that group to come to brunch one day. That started her network, and it took everything that she did to a whole nother level. These are all examples of masterminds. I feel like this is incredibly important, and I'm going to tell you this. I feel like God brought us together so we could talk about this today. Okay. I feel like this is a divine thing, and I'll tell you, it's something that's been on my heart, as I'm sure you can tell. Okay. And I know it's on yours because I can tell that you experienced this. And now that you've experienced it, you are on the other side of it where a lot of people need to get to.
Yeah. Look, I've made millions from mastermind groups.
Yeah.
Here, and it's not what you learn. So I know that was your original question, what you learned. Well, it's not what a mastermind is about.
Right.
It's about the cheerleaders. It's about the accountability. It's about being able to share successes. Who in your network, who in your sphere, can you honestly say, I have a goal of, an 8-figure balance sheet or whatever
Right.
your goal is?
Right.
I mean, people would laugh at you.
Right.
Your normal sphere, they're not going to support you in that. And when you start having success and you start sharing that success, and then there's jealousy,
Yeah.
and there's resentment, and there's all of these things, which is why we as entrepreneurs and high achievers, we hold that inside.
Yeah.
But a mastermind group allows you to
sphere.
release. Yeah.
That's why you have to upgrade your sphere, right?
And
Where
that's
do
what a
you
mastermind
find the
does.
upgrading of the sphere? In the mastermind groups.
Yeah.
Hello? Right? This is very simple, right? It sounds complicated, but it's not. So, I feel like that's incredibly important for people to understand. People who succeed at a very, very high level are part of this. They have this kind of support structure, right? Where you're sitting down and you're talking, and I'm in groups too, but you're sitting down and you're having a conversation. I went to a mastermind group 2 weeks ago here in San Diego. And the guy that put the mastermind group together is a buddy of mine. He's been on the podcast. We've interviewed him, right? Manny Moreno's his name. Shout out to Manny, right? And Manny said, hey, we want to have you down for this mastermind deal. Great. So I come down, I'm sitting there, and as I try to get to things early. So I'm 15, 20 minutes early, whatever it is. And Manny's standing in front of everybody. Hey, Mike, I'm super excited you're here. This is before everybody gets there. Super excited that you're here because, we can use your expertise. Like, Manny, I'm not here because I'm an expert. I'm here to learn, right? I'm here to learn from you guys. I end up teaching like 90% of it. Okay. I'm not joking.
I believe you.
This one guy comes up to me and he goes, hey, we've got this meetup that we do with investors next week. I'd love for you to come. Okay, I'll be there. So I go, right? There's a kid there that has a podcast that he started last year. He's in the midst of raising $200 million to build 785 affordable housing units right now. Right now. Okay. He's not much older than my son. I mean, talk about powerhouses, right? I'm sitting there with a private money lender. I'm sitting there with a guy that is getting ready to ink a deal to build houses for a developer that I literally worked with, that was a client of mine 2 generations ago. No joke. Okay. I've been doing this too long, right? But it's a small world, man. It's tiny. There's a guy standing there in that meetup that I've done deals with, tons of deals with in the last 3 years, never met him face to face. And he's standing there. They get around to introducing it to, everybody's introducing themselves. They get around to, he goes, I'm super excited to see Mike Litton here. What? Right?
And who are you?
Excuse me? Right? And all of a sudden, he says his name and I realize who it is.
Yeah.
You with me? Because I think it's his high school yearbook photo that's in the thing that I've been looking at.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I'm joking. By the way, Alex,
that sounds about right.
Right? But it was one of those things where you're just kind of like, what? And I'm telling you, and I know you are too, people need to listen to this. Okay. They need to go. And I know it's tough to go meet new people and all that kind of thing. I get all that. Okay. But you'll find people you'll connect with, and you'll find people that you enjoy talking to and that will encourage you and you'll encourage them. Man, at some of these mastermind groups, somebody needs a contractor. These guys showed up at this thing. First time I've ever been at this meetup. They had a $15 million contract for fast, dry concrete for a bridge in Mexico. They have a contract and they don't have a supplier for it. So they get up in front of this group and they're like, hey, we got this $15 million contract in case anybody's interested.
Yeah. I'm sure he had no problem finding a supplier.
Kind of cool, right?
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
Do you see what I'm saying though? And that's the kind of conversation that you're going to have in these groups. So I want to encourage people to go find mastermind groups, go find different things that you can go be a part of where the people around you are all more successful than you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And get yourself in a place where they will help you lift up. They will help you with whatever you need. CPA, any attorney, or whatever. In case you have a deposition. Just kidding. Right. All right.
And the people that you want in your group typically have huge hearts.
Yeah.
I mean, they will give their time and share with you. And I'm on this call with you and I'm getting text messages from one of my mastermind right now.
Yeah.
And it's every day. There's just so much encouragement through text. We all support each other. And I mean I know we've been beating this to death, but it is a game changer.
It's a big deal. And I feel like that's part of why you and I came together, is so we can get this message out. You with me? Yeah. And I know there are people, we're in 35 countries now. We've been doing this 8 months as of a couple of days ago. We've been doing this 8 months and 2 days. Exactly.
Wow. Congrats.
Okay? 100, you're the 185th episode. Okay. We did 50 in the month of February alone. I don't even know what happened to February. Okay. It's like a flipping blur. We've had over 300 requests to appear on this broadcast. Tell me that's not cool.
No, that's so cool.
Right? I mean, dude, it's amazing. We just broke 150,000 listens. In fact, last night we broke 154,000 listens. Okay. We're at 154,884 in case anybody's counting. We have over 75,000 downloads. We are rocking, dude. We have like momentum to spare. And it's super, super exciting to be doing this, right? The best thing about it, though, is the quality of the people that we're bringing to our listeners. There are people in 35 countries, and actually, technically, it's 36. I found out the other day that there are people in the U.S. military that are fans of our podcast that are on a base in Yemen.
Interesting.
Did you know we have a U.S. base in Yemen?
I did not know that.
I didn't either. But they're fans of our show. Isn't that wild?
Well, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah. We have officers in the Space Command that are fans of our show.
Yeah. So does that count as a country? How does that work?
I have no idea. But they're in Yemen. Like, what in the world is the Space Command doing in Yemen? Anyway, it's just cool, right? So I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to get to know you. So let's talk about Pine Financial. Let's talk about, like, I know you're doing fast closings, easy qualifying, free consultations, that kind of thing. And obviously, you know your stuff. And so if an investor is thinking about flipping houses, they need to come talk to you. If they're thinking about, what other things are you financing for people?
Yeah. So when you're in this business, there's risk, right? There's risk whenever you loan money.
Sure.
So one of the things we do to help mitigate that risk, Mike, is we are very geographically focused on the money we loan out. So there's two sides of the business. One is bring in private capital. So investors that want to be some exposure to real estate, but they want it to be passive.
Mhm.
This is a great way to get involved, right? And it's very consistent, very secure, all of those things. And that's nationwide.
Okay.
But when we loan the money out, we want to be very careful. So we want boots on the ground. We want people in our network that can go out and visit it. If there's any problems, if we get a property back, how do we handle that? So we're in, obviously, Colorado, which is where we're headquartered. We have a pretty big presence in Minnesota in the Twin Cities. We did go across the border there into Wisconsin. So we do cross the border from the cities and up in Milwaukee, and then in Washington, D.C. So I know we're kind of spread out, and there's a story about each one. But those are the four markets, right? And then the investor side is, again, nationwide. As far as what we do, we loan to real estate investors on value add projects. So we're 80% residential. That's where I feel the most comfortable. It's strong. It's liquid. And people would think I'm crazy when I say houses are liquid, but look, I could drop the price of a house and get rid of it pretty quickly. And it's easy to manage and run. You could produce cash flow if you want to rent it out. So I like residential a lot. That's obviously my background. So 80% resi, 20% everything else. So commercial, land, anything like that. And it's all value add. So when I say value add, Mike, what I'm talking about is, are you able to physically add value to the real estate, to the property?
Right.
So think about your fix and flips. Think about your BRRRR strategy, where you buy it, rehab it, and rent it out. And, we finance those. On the commercial side, it's...
Hold on. Let's just a second. Let's talk about BRRRR for just a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So you buy it, you rehab it, you rent it out. So you buy it, you rehab it, you rent it out for a higher number.
Yep.
You then turn around and refinance it.
That's right.
So what you're doing is you're financing the buy, the rehab.
Yep.
Right. They're going to rent it back out so that now, as a higher rent get, if you will, it's now worth more. They're going to refinance it. They're going to pay you off and then potentially pull out some equity if they built some up. Okay.
Yeah, there's two ways to do this.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first one is if you're just going to do a normal traditional type of transaction where you're putting a 25% down payment and you're funding the construction or whatever, and then you get it rented and you go to your refinance, then you're going to do a cash out refinance to try to get your money back so you can go out and rinse and repeat, right? Do it again. So that's one way to do it. The problem with that way is you'll save some money on the upfront because you're not paying hard money type rates. but you're going to be paying more interest on the back. And the reason for that is there's a big difference between cash out refinance and rate and term refinance, which you could probably speak about more better than I can.
Yeah.
But you'll have a lower rate if you're not pulling any cash out,
Right.
and there's no title seasoning. So you can get in and out of these very quickly. If you could rehab and get a place rented in a month, you could refinance in a month. There's no Fannie Mae title seasoning guidelines.
Right.
So the other way is what we do. You come in with high leverage. So you could finance the purchase and the construction. You don't have hardly any money, or sometimes no money out of your own pocket.
Mhm.
Do that process. And then when you do the refinance, it's a rate and term because
Mhm.
you're just paying off the current debt. And so now you lock in your lower rate. And I'm assuming you're going to keep it for a long term. It's a pretty good strategy. So it's the BRRRR strategy is to buy properties with the highest leverage as you can. That cash flow, you got to be smart here. So you want it to cash flow. And that's a way you could build a bigger portfolio.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm glad that you pointed that out in terms of that distinction, because it's important that people understand that, right? Cash out refinances are going to hit you as far as LTV, so loan to value. You're not going to be able to pull as much out. And you're also going to pay more in terms of points and rate in order to pull that cash out. And the idea behind it is that's a higher risk loan to the lender.
Right.
And so the lender, for lack of a better term, is going to, I don't want to call it soak you, but they're gonna let's be honest, right? they're gonna stick it to you a little bit. So people need to understand that that's something that has to factor into the strategy. And it's important that we talk about that before somebody gets a property under contract, right?
Yes.
So if somebody's thinking about doing the BRRRR method, which is really popular and it's a great way to build a portfolio, they really should reach out to you and talk with you about it and find out what it is, how it is that they go about doing it. So let me ask you this. Let's say that you're talking to somebody who's in one of your areas that you finance, and they're a first-time flipper. So they've never flipped a house before. Maybe they've got experience in the business, whatever, but they're doing their first flip. What sort of if they're flipping it, if they're buying it, and they need the rehab financed as well, what sort of down payment do you require? What does it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're in one of our markets, which is the only place we're lending on the
Right.
residential side, we don't have a loan to cost.
Okay.
So what you're referring to now is a loan to cost ratio. So how
Right.
much will I loan compared to what it costs to do the project?
Correct.
We have a no loan to cost ratio requirement.
Okay.
We have a loan to value requirement, which is 70%. And
Which
that's
is your
of
exit.
the ARV value, right?
Right.
So if you can get all in purchase, rehab, and your closing costs and still be under 70% of the future value, we'll finance 100% for you.
Okay.
We don't see a ton of that, just to be real transparent here.
Yeah.
So it is possible, no money down, but usually we have a little bit of money into it. The answer to that is, well, you just have to cover the difference. So if
Right.
you're all in at 73, we're capping you at 70, then you need 3%.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's go back, because a lot of people listening to this don't know what ARV is.
Yeah.
ARV stands for after repair value.
Right.
So what you do is if you're looking at a property and it's distressed, it's in rough shape, whatever, right? You figure out other sales comparables that are around, that have sold around that immediate area recently, last 6 months or so, that have been remodeled. Okay. And you try and figure out it's not ever going to be exact most of the time, but you try and figure out somewhere where you think the ARV might be. And then once you figure out what that ARV is, and let's just use an example. Let's use some round numbers for my brain. Let's say it's $100,000. You're going to basically have all of your rehab and your purchase price needs to be at $70,000, right? And if you're there, and you, by the way, have to look at the ARV and agree to it, correct? As the lender,
That's
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we agree on the 100,000. Let's say we agree on the 100,000 and we're at 70%. So we pay 70,000 for the property, and the rehab is in there too. So in this case, let's say it's $100,000 budget. You have to pay $600,000 for the house. You have a $100,000 rehab budget. Now you're at 10,000. I apologize. Let me go back.
Yeah, that's okay.
60,000. You'd have a $10,000 budget, get you to 70,000. That's your number, right? That's your
That's
deal.
right.
But let's say you're
You
at
got it.
75, just for fun. Let's say it runs to 75. If it runs to 75, then what you need down is that $5,000. You need that difference, that 5%. As long as you have that 5% in there, you're good to go.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it really is that simple as far as the qualifying for the property or the project. We are going to run it through a profitability test and make sure that you're actually going to make money.
Yeah.
But the numbers that we're talking about here, you will make money on that deal, unless you make a mistake on your rehab. So we do see people do that and they go over budget or whatever. There's still a chance to lose money, but assuming the numbers are accurate, then you will make money on that type of project. So we'll run it through the profitability and make sure that you're profitable, and we could talk about that.
Yeah, if you're flipping and you don't know what you're doing, okay, and even if you do, it's not a bad idea to have a contractor that checks your numbers, because that contractor is the one that's going to get paid to do that work.
That's right. You should do that. Mm-hmm.
And so, sit down with that contractor or walk the property with that contractor, make sure you're all on the same page. Make sure that you understand what the actual costs are, because if you're off, it's coming out of your pocket. It's not going to be something that the lender is going to cover. So it's important that people understand that. That's where people get into trouble, because they make these assumptions, right? And assumptions are a very dangerous thing in real estate. So if you have, get your contractor engaged, get your contractor to walk it with you and confirm whatever numbers you have. It's very important.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I might even add that you might want more than one contractor.
Yeah.
And if you do that, definitely make sure that you tell them what you want done, and then have a separate space for them to put in whatever they think needs to be done, because they all have their opinions. It happens 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But if they start adding their opinion to your budget, now you're comparing an apple to an orange.
Right.
So if you have everyone bid this list of things, and then you can compare them much easier.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Totally agree. Okay. So somebody is in one of those 4 areas that you lend in, right? And so we're talking Wisconsin, we're talking Minnesota, St. Paul, we're talking, we're talking about Minneapolis, St. Paul, we're talking about Wisconsin, we're talking about Washington, DC, and Denver. So if anybody's in those areas, they just need to reach out to you, and basically you can help them with what they need to try to figure out how to go forward.
Yeah, let's do it. Come with me. I'll help you. When you hire Pine Financial, you're getting a partner in your deal, because look, we don't want the property back. We want you to be successful, so you borrow from us again.
Right.
There's a lot of hard money and private money lenders that require experience. We are not one of those. We want to help groom. We want to lift people up. So we might ask that you have some experience on your team. Maybe you're a realtor or someone who knows what they're doing, so that you're not blindly going at it. But don't worry if it's your first project. We want to help.
If you have a contractor that's done it before, right? And let's say many times, right? And you have a realtor on your team that's been in the mix, so to speak, right? You can surround yourself with people that have, and I want to make sure that people understand this. I'm not suggesting that they take this enormous risk. What I am suggesting, though, is if they want to get into this side of the business, put your team together, right? And part of your team needs to be Pine Financial, I think. They need to reach out to you, and they need to figure out what you need and how they can be successful with you. Because, like you said, you don't want the property back. And what you really want is you want a customer that you're going to have from now on.
Yeah, that's right.
And, the best way to do it is to start off correctly. So that's cool.
And look, when you have someone like us looking at it, we're not going to make a dumb loan, right? We're looking over your shoulder, making sure that your numbers are accurate. Obviously, again, you can go over your budget without anybody realizing it. Our best clients go over their budget still. So that's why we build in contingencies. And there's some other things that we could talk about. But we're here to help support and not lose money. That's the goal.
Absolutely. And, it's an interesting time right now. Costs are not going down. And so,
they did for a little while because of all but now you're right. They're definitely on the rise now. All the backlog of the chain supply chain issues is gone now. So yes, you're right. They're going up now.
Yeah. So something to think about when you're bidding out your materials, right? When you're bidding out the work, when you're doing the things you're doing, you need to be thinking in terms of you're in an increasing cost time right now. And so you almost need to factor in a percentage of potential increase and have that in your budget, right? Some of the absolute best in the business have that kind of, let's call it slush, whatever you want to call it, right? But they have a margin in there that they have built into the deal so that they're as accurate at the end as they possibly can be.
Right.
And they try to anticipate what they can in terms of, lumber costs going up or whatever, right? This thing with this, and I don't know how much of this affects you guys, but this thing with this cargo ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore, that shut down a major port. That's one of the biggest ports on the planet, let alone in the US. Nothing's moving.
Right.
Like literally nothing's moving. And that can be a real issue. The stuff that's going on in the Middle East, and they're having to go down around the Horn of Africa, that's having an impact on costs. And I don't want to scare people, but I do want them to think in terms of, you know what, this is stuff that we need to factor in, because when you're flipping a house, you're 2-3 months in construction. You're going to be buying materials 2-3 months from now that may be higher in cost than where they are currently, or what you're currently being quoted. So just something to think about. But listen, I cannot thank you enough for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been an absolute blast. And I did not anticipate that we were going to have this much fun. I knew we'd have fun, but I didn't realize we'd have this much. But Kevin, I really appreciate you being on. It was great to meet you, bud.
Yeah, Mike, I really appreciate it too. And a lot of things we didn't get into. Normally, people ask me about the economy and what's going on in the market, especially housing. So I did just throw this out there if it's okay. There's a report that we give away for free if you're interested in.
Absolutely.
I compare a crash in the 90s. What happened in the 90s after the savings and loans is better resemblance of what's going on now.
Yeah.
Compared to 2008, which we touched on in this episode. So look, it's nowhere near 2008. It doesn't even resemble it at all, but it does have some similarities to the 1990s. So I just compare what's going on right now to that recession, and I put it in a report. We give it away for free. It's thepinereport.com, thepinereport.com. So I know a lot of people are interested in what's going on right now, and things are getting even more interesting, aren't they?
Yeah, every day. So we'll put a link to that in your description for the episode, so people can just click on it and go get it.
Sounds great.
Anything else?
I really appreciate your time. I had a ton of fun too. I mean, I shared with you about the rodeo, which I never do. So you know something about me a lot of people don't. I had a great time. So I really do appreciate you putting this out there for everybody and having me on.
Man, I learned a ton. I had no idea the Army was ever in the rodeo. I had no idea. That is just crazy.
That was a long time ago.
Cool. Huh?
That seems like a long time ago.
Well, if you think about it, it probably was a recruiting tool too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you lied to me. Maybe there never was a rodeo. I don't know. I mean,
but
pretty sure there was.
You got a lot of country boys coming off the farm, right?
Yeah.
They're going to go into one of the 4 branches. And if you're the branch that has rodeo.
Yeah, they got me.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I love it. Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate it, Mike. Have a good one.
You too. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.